Hey, this is Matt Duckworth with Rhapsody, and I want to show you how to increase. What did I do? How does this work? Okay, here we go. I want to show you how to increase the net income of your B2B professional services company by double digits in 2023 without disrupting your operations or causing you a bunch of problems. That's really what I'm concerned about, because you can change a lot in a company, but if you disrupt a bunch of things, things get set on fire and it's not good. So let me tell you how I learned this, and this will make a whole lot more sense. And if you stay around to the end of this, I'm going to give you some free resources. And so just hang tight with me, because you're going to see, I'm going to share with you 2 frameworks for how you can implement this yourself if you'd like to try that. And then also so the process that we go through whenever we're doing this with our clients. You might learn something from that. So I learned this by basically helping businesses grow for like the last decade. And I've owned some companies. I have several businesses now. And I've read hundreds of books. I've got an MBA. I've got a Texas billionaire mentor. I've tried everything that I can to get an unfair advantage. And I don't feel like I had an unfair advantage up until about a year and a half ago. It was at that point that I started to go down this rabbit hole of reading about people like Deming, Charles Koch. I'd always been a huge fan of Warren Buffett, but I really got deep in that. And I found a couple of pieces that I just started to try this, and I started to try this. And I would notice there was a change whenever I would implement one thing. And I started to kind of group them together as basically a plan. And whenever I grouped that plan together and I could convince a client to let me actually do it, we got awesome results. Usually it was, I didn't quite understand what I was doing, and I think that my clients maybe recognized that I'm pulling these things together and it's not a cohesive plan. And so they were skeptical, but eventually they saw the results, and now we're humming. And so I spend a lot of time, and like right now I'm actually supposed to be on vacation, and so I've been thinking about this, and we've in the last several months we pulled it into a plan that we can basically guarantee somebody, if they fit a certain box, I'll say that, I'll caveat it, if they qualify, I can guarantee somebody that they're going to increase their net income by $300,000, which is pretty cool. We're starting to learn how to create more value, which has been the goal all along. So let's jump into this. There are 4 major questions that we ask whenever we're going into a company. And I was thinking about all the different businesses. I've had maybe 40 plus like major engagements with clients throughout my career, like that were like typically lasted multiple years. And I was thinking about what we really did and what were the things that got results. And there are 4 major patterns that I see that whenever you step back and think about it, it turns into 4 questions that lead us down a few different paths, but they all lead to the same processes that need to be implemented. I think every company needs to do this unless they are a low-cost competitor. So question number 1, is the business chaotic? So are there weak processes, procedures? Is there basically a lack of an integrator who's at a leadership position and has also been given the authority? You see that? That's a big one. The authority and decision rights to do their job and help to integrate and manage the company and keep everybody in line, right? On behalf of the CEO. That's a major pattern that I see with CEOs, is that they know that they need processes. They would love an integrator. It's that whenever somebody gets in and tries to help them, the owner of the business has a way of just kind of messing it all up and stirring up some chaos, or getting at odds with the integrator and not letting the integrator do their job. And so the first thing that we got to do, we got to get an integrator in there, and we got to get the CEO to understand how their behavior impacts the success or failure of that integrator. And so that's a big decision, and that leads us on a path. And I'm going to get to that path here in just a minute. The next thing that happens is if the answer is, yeah, we're really well organized, we know what to do, we're just not making enough money, it's kind of hard. The next question is the business differentiating itself along a very specific customer type? And so think of businesses that are commoditized as like a square. Is like they're covering all of this space. They're trying to cover all of this area, right? With a company that's differentiated, they don't have to cover the same amount of area. So what does that mean? Well, that's less effort. That's less cost. And that can also be more valuable to the customer. So it creates margin. And this is the whole Porter's differentiation strategy. This is the root of it. This is why it works. This is boots on the ground why it works, is because you do less work and you get referred more. And so your cost of marketing is lower. It's that simple. So we want to differentiate. If the company's already differentiated, then the number of options that we have to really move the needle start to go down a lot. So, but the next question is, and this is still a huge one, is does the business price off of value? So a lot of companies, especially in professional services, they get caught in the time for money trap. And the time for money trap is an unfair, dumb way to do business. There's some probably caveats to that. You may have a great reason for it, but I would argue that, I'll tell you a very quick story. We called 1-800-GOT-JUNK the other day, and I thought that this was just brilliant. They called me immediately, probably within 15 minutes of me scheduling a time for me to have them come pick up some junk at our house. And the guy said, hey, we'll be out in 15 minutes, if that's okay. I told him to come on, and whenever we got there, he had a laminated piece of paper, and he said, Mr. Duckworth, looking at all of the things that you want us to haul away, it looks like you're going to be between a third of a load and a half of a load. And so if it's a half of a load, it's going to be $350. If it's a third of a load, it's going to be $280. Is that okay? And I said, yeah, that's fine. That's an example of pricing off of value. It's a way to frame the discussion to stay away from time for money and to be focused on what is it, the thing that you're delivering to that customer. And so in professional services, that comes with, if you can make an impact on earnings, net income being one of them. I'm doing this right now. This is how we price things. It could be a certain amount of risk reduced. It could be amount of certainty increased. There are a ton of different ways to basically price off a value, and it's defined by your customer, and that's the trick. And so we have to have some conversations with the customer to understand how do we price off value. And there are people who are really good at setting up these kind of plans, and so we work with some experts in this area to do that. And so pricing off of value is the next big question. If the answer is yes, we price off of value now, then the main thing that's left is, are we getting the most out of our people? Do our people really care that much about how much money you, Mr. Business Owner, are going to make this year? And a lot of businesses, they're not aligned to helping their employees be successful and letting their employees be true entrepreneurs and to use their full capabilities to grow as human beings and as business professionals. And so what happens is you leave a lot of people's heart and soul on the table. And it's a shame, because some people would love to be engaged and feel like an owner, but they're never given an opportunity. And so the last thing that we do as part of this process is to change the way that people get compensated so that they are basically compensated off the value that they create. And so what this does is it completely aligns your organization to value creation and getting paid for that value creation. And whenever you do that, you uncap the amount of money that somebody can earn for an hour of effort. it becomes part of the DNA of the organization. That's the key. And so part of what we're doing is we're changing the DNA of the company, and we have to do it very carefully. We have to do it one step at a time, and I'm going to show you some resources that walk you through how we do that. But the key part of this is we got to clarify our organization's values, an org chart, and then we have to basically identify customer segments that we know pretty well, we know that we can serve them, and they're really good customer segments. And so that's what we're going to latch onto, and we're going to focus around that. Then we're going to create a differentiated value delivery method. So that's a new product service. And this can be shaping what you're already doing. That's all we're hoping to do. And over time, we can shape it more and advance it, but we don't have to change everything full stop. And then we're going to implement value-based pricing, align the incentives of the team, and then implement a financial toolkit to basically manage to goal and make sure that our plan is not only in writing operationally, but it's being adhered to financially. So the way that we kind of got there was I was doing CFO work. And this is one of the things that led me into this more management consulting sort of role, is I was going into companies and they were asking me to get them results, and everything was on fire. It was just a dumpster fire. And nobody knew where documents were at. And I would ask for something and it would take me 3 weeks to get it, and nobody cared, it seemed like. And it was because everybody's just, they're pulled in 20 different directions. It's just the way that it is sometimes. And so the first thing that we realize is a lot of this is really hard to implement if we don't have an integrator COO who can help organize everybody and make sure that things are just, we know where documents are at. People care about getting, with that integrator, they have a really great way of dealing with employee issues, and so you don't have a lot of people who are just slacking on the job. It gets dealt with, and so things happen a lot faster. And so it was way easier for us to help companies get out of a bind. And so we were looking at their balance sheets and trying to understand, well, should we restructure debt? And a lot of times we just found out that unless a company was truly in a dire situation where usually like the revenue spigot was being turned off, a lot of times they just needed financial visibility. So it was better bookkeeping systems. They needed some KPIs that kept them focused on the main things. They needed to understand cash flow, and they needed to basically have a budget that they adhered to so that they could implement this financial plan. So this is how it all started, this net income improvement process. But we realized it's not enough. We got to have that integrator. And so what we basically created was a program where we work with really talented COO integrators and other professionals, sales training professionals, and we have a team-based approach where we implement these solutions for our clients. So before anybody, we charge a lot of money. Typical engagement is going to be near $100,000. And so what we, it varies by the size of the company, obviously, but whenever you're getting into larger companies, it's that much. So most people don't want to spend that kind of money unless they know that, we're going to do what we say we're going to do. And so where we start is the financial performance engineering audit. And this is just the outline that we have internally for our folks to follow as we're going through the process. But I want to walk you through it because you'll see some things that if you want to try to implement this, go for it, because this is really, really powerful stuff. And what we do is we basically create a roadmap of everything by collecting data and doing interviews. And that's going to lead us to understand the bottlenecks of the company, and we can put that into a plan, in a proposal. And so whenever we get in, we're going to look at the accounting system. We're going to look at operational data. Just your folder structure will tell us a lot. Pricing policies, org chart, incentives, employee reviews, tech stack. we're going to survey your management team, because we want to know, what are your priorities? How do you spend time? Are people burned out? That tells us a lot about how the company is being managed. If you're growing like a rocket, that's one thing, but if you're just stagnant and everybody's burned out, that's another. And then we also do some tests just to understand who's more visionary, who's more integrator. And then each position is going to get basically reviewed to understand what are the goals of this position, what should the goals be, and then how are people doing against those goals. We have some exercises that help us with this differentiation understanding, and creating these new business models. And then we're going to interview a lot of folks, and that leads to a plan that basically talks about role clarity, goal clarity, execution, bottlenecks, team, market position, pricing, decision data. And what you get at the end of this is basically a report. And it'll come in a content hub, but you're also going to get a booklet that you can keep with you and show to any your advisors if you have them. And it's going to have evaluations for each metric that we put into that you just saw on that checklist, with a criteria for each metric, so that you have some kind of objective measure of, are we doing good or bad? And we're going to discuss those gaps, ways that you can improve on those, what are best practices, and we're going to summarize all that and basically put that into a plan for you to implement. And so that plan will list step by step everything that you need to do over a 16-week period, because typically the implementation period that we use. And so over the 16-week period, what do you got to do? You got to hire an integrator. You got to go through sales training. You got to go through develop a new comp program. Everything is detailed, along with who's going to do that. And so we price out the number of hours that we think it's going to take for if you implemented this yourself. And you can, you get that with this program. And so whenever we go through the audit, we typically charge about $5,000. It depends on the size of the company, but you get this full-blown report, and it tells you if you would want to work with us and if this is right for you. So that's the system. So if you want to learn more about this, click the link that's in the comments under this video. And you can also access that link to get the version 1.0 and version 2.0 of the net income improvement process PDFs that we just showed you, and that checklist that I just showed you if you want to try to implement this yourself. And if you'd like to talk with us about getting our help, contact us at va@rhapsody.net or through one of the social media channels that you might see this video on. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and we'll love to answer any kind of questions that you have, so feel free to comment below or shoot me a message, whatever. But good luck, and hope for the best of your success.